Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome to Live from Saturn. I am Duncan Gale.
I'm Cody. I can't really think of a nickname.
Burley.
Cody Burley Decker. That's why you're the nickname guy.
There you go. All right. So yes, today we will be reviewing the novel "The Time Machine Did It" by John Swartzwelder.
Which at the bottom of every book,
yeah,
it includes by the writer of 59 episodes of The Simpsons.
Right. So yes, indeed. So yes, John Swartzwelder. Yeah, born in 1949 from Seattle, and yes, he is most well known for being a Simpsons writer and having written 59 episodes, which, yeah, from what I could tell, is to this day still the largest number of episodes written by a single writer on The Simpsons to this day. So that's an impressive total that he has there. In terms of Swartzwelder's kind of background, he is a sort of mysterious figure. The funniest writer on The Simpsons, from what I know. Mm-hmm. But he will not show up on commentaries. Yep. That's right. Yeah. There's one episode of The Simpsons, the Cartridge Family. It's the episode where Homer buys a gun. It's a great episode that he wrote.
That's funny that's the plot of Homer buys a gun.
Yeah, Homer buys a gun. Hilarity ensues, and it does. And on the commentary for this episode, if you have this, I believe it's season 9 of the Simpsons. So if you have that DVD set, you can listen to the commentary. And on it, they actually call John Swartzwelder, and they have him on speakerphone, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm just grilling up a steak." And they don't even tell him that he's like being recorded on a commentary, and they're like, we just figured, people want to hear from you and know who you are. And he's like, oh, that's great, and they're like, okay, well, nice to talk to you, John. And then he's like, yeah, too bad this isn't actually John Swartzwelder. Click. And so
we.
Yeah, so that's a sort
enigmatic.
Enigmatic. Yeah, he's one of these guys. He has some sort of somewhat more conservative political views. He's like a little bit of a sort of like libertarian. He marches to his own drum, as you could say. So that's very, very interesting background to him. And so most of the episodes of The Simpsons that he writes are probably going to be episodes that focus mostly on Homer. And in fact, just to get a little bit into the sort of background of TV writing, which I'm not an expert on, but from what I understand, when you see that a TV episode is credited by a writer, that's like a little bit misleading. It's sort of that writer might have, written the initial script, but maybe no more than 5 to 10% of their writing is actually in the episode itself. But apparently John Swartzwelder is the sort of exception to that. He will turn in these scripts and they're almost completely perfect as is. They're these finely constructed machines, people say, where if you interfere with one part of it, it will sort of fall apart. So there's not much that needs to be done with his scripts, except that a lot of times they need to add dialogue for Marge and Lisa, because he doesn't really write dialogue for those characters so much. He's mostly just a Homer guy.
And they're also not really the funny characters.
They're not. They're not as overtly funny. And clearly he doesn't think of them as the funny characters.
So,
but
I saw that where it's that bit where Bart sells his soul,
right?
And then it's the bicycle gets run over by a street sweeper, and it looks cleaner than it was, and it's perfectly in shape. But then Bart tries to to get on it. He's like, sweet, but then it just shatters, and then the street sweeper laughs and then goes to like a portal to hell, and like the commentator's like, that is entirely John Swartzwelder.
Right.
Every bit of that, he just kept going.
Right.
And they're like, that's like how he writes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, once you're aware of John Swartzwelder and his style, you can't help but sort of like start to see things in Simpsons episodes, be like, oh yeah, I can see that was him. To me, one of the quintessential Swartzwelder moments is in that same Cartridge Family episode where Homer has the gun and he goes into the Quickie Mart and he like has the gun out and like Apu is like scared and he's like, oh no, are you going to rob me? And Homer's like, what would happen if I did that?
And rob the Quickie Mart.
Yeah. And there's this fantasy sequence, and it's Homer in this like Texas Colonel type outfit, and he's like he's sitting on his porch, and he's like twirling his gun, and Marge is next to him, and she's like a go-go dancer, like dancing next to him, and then it goes back to real life, and Homer's like, okay, I'll do it. And then it zooms out, and he's actually already in his car driving away, and he's like, no! Next time.
It's because it's like, it's absurd, but then like realistically, it's like Homer, like all Homer did is he like went to the donut, like he just got donuts, and then then it's like this like absurd reality at the same time. Right. And it is like, as far as like imagine a whole book of just that joke.
Right. So imagine a detective story where the detective is basically Homer Simpson.
When I describe this book as like The Naked Gun if Homer or Chris Farley.
Yeah. Chris Farley would be good.
Because there's like slapstick comedy, and I push this book on everyone, and I'm like, open this to any page, and it will be a funny line.
Yeah.
And didn't work that time, but I'll do it. I'll tell you what, the opening lines, and I think are perfect for, it's like, okay, to get you into this world, the first two lines are, Frank Burley is my name. Okay, it's not my name.
Right.
That's...
Yeah. No, this...
Here's a line.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Page 13. I woke up this morning in a cardboard box, which I was told to get out of because it wasn't mine.
Right.
This is the funnest book in the world, so much so that I'm like, okay, I actually have to physically read it because there's no audiobook. It is a incompetent detective who is hired by a homeless man to get his fortune that he says was stolen from him in the past with a time machine. And he hands him like a bunch of garbage. And he says, when you restore the timeline, that's going to be valuable stuff. Right. And Frank Burley is just like, all right, I got nothing else to do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, this book definitely has a plot and consistent characters, and there is a storyline, but obviously the primary goal of the guy that wrote this is to make you laugh, and to make you laugh as often as possible. And there is a joke in like pretty much every paragraph. I mean, or more than one joke in every paragraph. So the sort of joke density of this book is very impressive and very high. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to the park. I'm gonna read a book, and I'm reading this. I'm laughing out loud. I'm like, this feels wrong. I shouldn't be reading this in public. This feels like I'm like, the book is just the humor of literature. I maybe I overthink things, but I was like, I was laughing out loud the entire time I was reading this book. Yeah, and so and I think that's. I mean, that's the strength and the weakness of this book. I would say just at the outset is that if being funny is all you care about in a book, this is a pretty strong one. But if you are concerned with more than just that, this book is not for you.
I will. It's just like it brings up like interesting points about time travel.
It does,
but not for the sake of making you think about it. Like, because I do tell, like, I retell it to people, and I'm like, what if you there's a lot of things people say they would do if they went back in time. And this guy tries to do them, and they don't work.
Right.
And if there's just like that, it's purely because that is very funny that he can't figure it out.
Right. Yeah.
So
I mean,
stuff like he tries to pay someone, and they're like, this money is fake because it doesn't look anything like money in the past.
Right.
So he can't buy anything.
Right.
And it's just like, that's hilarious, and it just brought up to me a lot of stuff about time travel people maybe don't think about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, the book brings up a lot of important points, really only to just sort of dismiss them immediately afterwards.
To make fun of it.
Yeah. Right.
Not for the sake of like
the style,
being like, ooh, has man gone too far?
Right.
It is like, that this guy's an idiot. Which is which the first chapter,
right,
is he is in a fight with he is hired as a bodyguard to some rich kid. And that rich kid gets in a fight with another rich kid who also hired a bodyguard. And so they're just fighting for these rich kids. And he gets beaten up, and it's, he's like, I'm 140 pounds or he's 60 pounds of rock hard fat. And the way he describes himself. And then he gets beaten up, and he just sees those two rich kids walk away because they were friends, and they just buy bodyguards to get in fights. And that's just like one of the things he does with his life is he's like, I gotta stop doing this, but it pays good.
Right.
Yeah, and he has a detective agency. The reason why is he saw an ad for being a detective, and he was like, I might as well do that.
This is one of the lines that really got me was he basically had a correspondence class in the mail to become a detective, and he said, the first couple of lessons taught me how to dress like a detective and spell detective. But the last 38 lessons were just torn up newspapers. So that's that's a good line.
It's this is my God, you got to check. Also, it's under humor mystery, and there is a mystery going on. Now
there is,
He doesn't care what the mystery is, and he's very loosely trying to figure it out for the sake of it.
And really, the mystery is revealed in the title of the book. Actually, the time machine did in fact do it. Yeah.
Which, at one point he sees a guy walk into a booth, and then he leaves with the painting of Mona Lisa.
Right.
And then he's like, I need to investigate that. And he walks up to the guy. He's like, hey, can you show me how you did that?
Right.
The guy's like, are you a cop? It's like,
right.
Like, no, I'm a detective. He's like, no, I'm not gonna. He's like, no, I'm not. And, he's like, okay, I'll do it, but. So he's like, that maybe has something to do with this going on. I'll have to look into it further.
Right.
He's got an assistant that he wanted to be like a sassy secretary, and then she just doesn't do her job.
Right.
And he's like, well, she's cheap. Like on that line where it's like he has those demotivational posters that say like give up, don't do it because they were cheaper.
Right.
Because he can't afford motivational posters.
Right.
That's literally every line in this is a joke that makes me laugh.
Yeah, I mean, when the when the guy actually comes to him to introduce the main mystery, he says, after the guy tells him the story, he says, I thought about his story and consulted my notes. I realized I couldn't read my notes and had forgotten most of his story. So, there you go. There's another great line. That I enjoy. Yeah.
He walks into his office and he calls. She didn't look up from her magazine. What am I? Your secretary? Yes. She says, look, just leave me alone. And just nothing gets done.
Right.
Yeah. He is hired by Thomas Dewey Mandible III, who is now a homeless person who says his fortune's been stolen.
Right.
With a time machine. And he's just like, and I subtly made a circular motion with my finger while taking a story in.
Yeah.
He heard my Like he makes like my murmur of like.
Yeah, and then I realized that there was nobody else in the room other than him, and
oh yeah, I went like, do you get a load of this guy? And I
right.
I realized it was just me and him, so I tried to undo that. Yeah, it's I really picture him as Chris Farley. There's a part where like an explosion happens where he just gets knocked back into a car, and I'm like, that's all I see. That's all him.
Right.
So yeah, I when did, yeah. I need to stop just trying to say lines in it.
Well, no, it's good, yeah, because that goes with the overall Chris Farley theme. Yeah. I mean, we're basically just doing this like the Chris Farley show. It's like, you remember that part where he said that? That was funny. That was awesome. Hey, remember this? Yeah. So that's the Chris Farley connection. Yeah,
we'll just talk about the plot.
Okay.
Yeah. The plot.
Right.
Is like the mafia stole a briefcase time machine.
That's right.
And they are just going back in time and stealing everything.
Stealing everything from time periods. And at one point it says 1995 was completely cleaned out. It's like so that's the sort of logic that they're dealing with. Yeah. So criminals go back in time, they steal stuff, and they also corrupt the police force. So I mean the police force is not.
I think that, and they're like blatantly they've got like statues and they're
right.
They just have like clearly things stolen from time with them.
Right.
And the mafia like captures the detective at one point. They try to threaten him and it doesn't really work because he's too stupid to get like what they're threatening him with.
Right.
And like they think he's more of a threat than he actually is, and they end up like giving him information that he didn't have.
Right.
And eventually he goes back in time, which is where like, the funniest parts for me happen. The parts that made me like want to like retell people the story.
Right.
But yeah, I have to not quote the book too much.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to talk about this book without just talking about all of your favorite jokes in it, which we've already done to a certain extent. But yeah. So I mean, he's investigating this mystery, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere for a while. But yeah, I mean, once he actually gets his hands on the time machine, then things start to sort of go a little bit further plot wise. Yeah, and he goes back in time to 1941. Again, yeah. So when he goes back in time to 1941, he goes to the elevator of his building, and instead of an old man there, it's a 4-year-old child operating the elevator. And I just love that logic of he's still operating the elevator, but as a 4-year-old child this time. Yeah. So it's
the logic of it, I love it. It's my favorite. I was thinking of the part where he's like, I was walking down the street and Audrey Hepburn was making a film, and Buddy Holly was there too. Yeah, and just because I don't know if you saw the reboot to Quantum Leap that they did.
No, I haven't seen the reboot.
But yeah, he goes back in time, and on the radio they're playing a song from that time, and then like, oh, look at that, it's a poster for David Bowie, and it's like, like all these like, I was just thinking of this book that was making fun of that type of thing. Yeah. Where he's like, everything he's saying is like, oh, and they were filming a movie like, hey buddy, it's the 1940s, you can't be doing that. Right. Which is funny because that's how we talk now. Like the way we talk is like perfect for people who go back in time, because people are just like, buddy, it's 2022. Right.
We are very self-referential with the time period we're in. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, because I've been watching like newer things, and so it's like they include how people talk like that. Right. So I'll be watching a movie and they're like, it's 2019. I'm like, oh, okay. So I know that gives me a lot of reference points. Right. I guess his time. I don't know like what would qualify as spoiler, but him going back in time would be like when the big plot starts happening. Right. Comedies are hard to pin down when you actually stop time. Arbitrary break time. We're gonna read some comments. Okay. Go buy the book. You freaking. We got a couple on Edgar Allan Poe.
Mm-hmm.
Techno Tengu says, "Dang, I can't believe they got the Raven on the show."
Yeah.
I don't know who they're. Are they? Did we? I don't know what that means actually.
Well, yeah. I mean, we have a certain amount of influence, and we reached out to the Ravens people, and thought it was mutually beneficial.
We did get a quote from him.
Yeah.
Never mind. And someone at Rumham asked the question on our Discord, which you can do, in addition to subscribing and liking and commenting.
Mm-hmm.
You can join the Discord. And this is just that we have a section just for talking about individual episodes. This was on the Edgar Allan Poe episode. I didn't watch the whole episode yet. Okay. But did you guys mention that the Alan Parsons Project made a concept album based on Edgar Allan Poe's work? I just said it didn't come up. I don't think either of us knows what that band is. Do you know who had the Edgar Allan Parsons Project?
I mean, I know the Alan Parsons Project. I mean, I know their one song, "Don't Answer Me," which has a really cool music video, which is sort of like in a comic book style. But I doubt that's part of that album. But yeah, I wasn't aware of that. But that's interesting. Yeah.
But now we know. And if you join the Discord, you can know too. Anyway.
Okay.
We're just gonna. We're gonna just talk about the story straight up.
Just spoil the hell out of it. Yeah.
But the fun bits for me were because he's stuck in time because it's like he breaks it.
Right.
And he's like, okay, well, I'm from the future. He's like, oh, I didn't really pay attention to sports, so I can't bet on anything.
Right. Yeah.
The ballpoint pen, I can invent that.
Right.
And that's and then people are like, well, how does it work? He's like, I don't really know how it works. And he's also like, and they're like, okay, can you like make it? He's like, oh, I don't have any tools. I don't have access to any tools to actually make this thing. Mm-hmm. So he's like, well, I'll pay them the money. Your money is not good. It looks fake.
Right.
It looks counterfeit. He's like, okay, I need to get a job. They're like, where's your birth certificate or social security card? He's like, well, I wasn't born yet. And they're like, well, we can't hire people that aren't born yet.
Right. Yeah, and that was one part of, I mean, as sort of, absurd and ridiculous as this novel is overall, that was one part that made me reflect on, I mean, if you went back in time, I mean, you would have certain advantages, but for the most part, you would be really kind of screwed. Because, again, you couldn't use your money. I mean, you might have some knowledge of the time period, but unless it was pretty extensive, that wouldn't get you very far.
Yeah, it's almost like, I know this baseball team wins in this year. It's like, is it that exact time right now?
Right, exactly, yeah.
Because if not, you're gonna have to wait a while. You're gonna have to try to figure out how to get food, and shelter. He also hires a guy to can you make this pen for me?
Right.
And he's like, well, okay, how does it work? It's also like, well, that guy would just steal it. That guy would then just, he's the one who's like, well, I'm going to sell this now because I did all the work. He also hires a guy to try to fix the time machine. One of my favorite slapstick comedy bits, which is the time machine just immediately explodes.
Right.
He knocks into a car and he falls asleep. And one of those street urchins that are he's like, the street urchin yelling what you heard. He's like, it's 1940, which we didn't have that accent was not accurate at all. But, the street urchin walks by and he's like, how long was I out? He's like, you've been out for 2 hours. He's like, 2 hours? Well, that's a start for time travel.
Right, yeah. Okay, I went 2 hours in the future. Right, yeah.
Eventually he does get out and then there's time copies of him because he's gone back. He's used it so much for so many petty things.
Right.
But there's a bunch of which he mentioned they mostly just avoid eye contact with each other.
Yeah.
So he'll be walking down the street and see another version of himself and they kind of just
Right.
It's when you recognize someone but you don't want to talk to them. They just do that thing.
Yeah. And then one time he has to hide some of the duplicates in his closet or something. And, yeah.
Some of them open up other detective agencies that he now has to compete with.
Right.
So he's losing business and yeah.
I mean, another kind of more serious point that was in here, or idea at least, is when he meets the scientist that created the time machine. The guy says, well, basically just I read science fiction novels. Because the only difficult thing about inventing something is coming up with the concept of it. But I just look at ideas that are already in science fiction novels and I just figure out how that works. And it's not actually that difficult to figure out how it works and put it together. And so that's how he comes up with inventions, is by looking in science fiction novels.
I'll just do that.
Yeah. And then the guy that wrote the science fiction novel can be like, hey, I predicted this, so everybody wins. Yeah. So that part was interesting. Yeah.
That's pretty much, honestly, that's the plot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the plot is, I mean, it's, once the time machine element is introduced into it, it's basically just, a relatively standard time travel plot, although with a lot of subversions in it of, he needs to go back in time and prevent this thing from happening. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We'll give you one more one. No, I think there is like a parody of the noir thing where like there's like a girl who's trying to seduce it. You're handsome. He's like, like you. I feel if you think I'm handsome, I feel sorry for you. Like
right.
He's like, why are you lying to me?
Yeah.
And she's she's like kissing him, and she's like, oh, I can't do it.
Right.
And he's like, oh, why? Because you like me now? She's like, no, you're just so ugly.
Yeah.
And off-putting, and I can't seduce you.
Yeah, he's so ugly that she can't even pretend. Yeah, to seduce him a little bit. Yeah. So
it just takes detective stories, time travel stories, and just makes fun of them. And you just have Homer.
Right. It's basically just Homer is a detective, and so again, if you want a story with a certain amount of substance to it, this might not be up your alley.
No, this is absolutely. I want to be a little silly right now.
Yeah,
I'm gonna check out the Time Machine.
Yeah.
Maybe people see a book like this, like, oh, no back cover. There's
right.
Maybe they will think this is classic literature, and you can go out in public, you can read a book. People will be like, who's that book reading guy?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, did you ever think about how time travel? What about money? You wouldn't have money.
Mm-hmm.
I read it recently in a novel. I'll just cover this, but a mystery novel, actually.
Okay. Yeah. Serious mystery novel.
Yeah, he wrote 57 episodes of a well-respected TV show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's those are deep thoughts. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Like you could sit there and be like, oh. The guy we all want to be.
Right.
Okay, I opened up to the seduction part.
Okay,
you know what? We're kind of done.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to do this now.
Okay.
Now we're going to do it.
All right.
She kept moaning, Frank. And I kept asking, what? Suddenly she pulled away. What's wrong, I asked. I can't do it. I was supposed to pepper you with kisses and then knock you out on the head with a champagne bucket, but your better nature prevailed? No, you're just so unattractive to me. I don't care if our whole plan falls through. I'm not going to do it. Fantastic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there was a part early on where a guy comes to see him, and is just asking about a stolen mailbox.
Oh yeah.
And it turns out, well, yeah, I mean the mailbox is actually not that valuable. It would probably be easier to just buy a new one. And so he's like, yeah, okay. And so he left, and he says, yeah, and aside from the occasional Christmas card, I haven't heard from him again. And that was funny. Yeah.
It is like a complete waste of time. This scene.
Yeah, right.
This guy's like, I want to pay you to find this mailbox. The police won't do it. They say it's not worth my time. It's like, okay, why charge $500 an hour? Like, it is like you can like you could just totally. It's just like, geez, $500. Like the mailbox is only worth like $20.
Right.
And then just the idea that they still send each other Christmas.
Yeah, that's sweet. Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, sometimes if I like something enough, I can talk for a while about things that I kind of don't like. Mm-hmm. But if it's something I really like, I'm kind of like,
wow, we're stumped. Yeah.
I can't nitpick it. I have no issues with it. I think it's a perfect comedy. The fact that he just got paid to get beaten up by another bodyguard because he's not good at anything.
Right.
And just the guy's like, geez, $500. That's not really worth it to me. He's like, yeah, that's what I would tell you. So he just leaves, and it's like not really relevant. I think maybe he finds the mailbox during time travel though. And he's like,
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So it's like, oh yeah, good. That's probably why they keep in touch.
But yeah, I mean, again, this is very purely just one thing, and so you really have to just judge it on those merits. So in terms of its, humor value, I mean, for me personally, like, when I'm like watching something by myself, I will laugh sometimes, but definitely not as often as if I'm watching it with other people. And then it's even more so if I'm just like reading something by myself. I mean, maybe I'll laugh out loud every now and then, but it's hard. So yeah, I mean, the fact that this book even made me laugh out loud a couple of times, that's a pretty good recommendation. Yeah, because it's a tough trick to pull off, and it's almost like when you're reading something like this, you need to like have the right sort of voice in your head in order to get the sense of humor. Because yeah, again, John Swartzwelder is not like somebody that what he sounds like, what he's like. I mean, what he's like from his Simpsons writing, but you just sort of have to come up with a voice in your head. I mean, you could imagine it as like Homer's voice or something, and that would probably work. But yeah, so that's maybe the only sort of barrier to entry is just like if reading humor is something that is not going to make you laugh that much, you need to sort of get into that a little bit. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm not a physical reader. I hate doing it. Mm-hmm. I would get home and I would be like, I cannot wait to read another chapter of this.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's also, as far as it's mostly kid friendly. Yeah. You gotta be in your teen. I mean, not for like a child, but like.
I mean, it's on the same level as the Simpsons, Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, tell them that they can't read it because it's too mature.
Right.
And trick them. Now, this is part of an ongoing series, too, which I do have. Which is, so the first one was The Time Machine Did It. Then it's Double Wonderful. That one is not that good, I'm going to say.
Oh, really?
Double Wonderful, it is entirely one joke, which is there's these two people that own this perfect farm that the whole town hates, but they're just like perfect.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, oh yeah, there's like a marshmallow farm that they have that just grows marshmallows and stuff. How I Conquered Your Planet, The Exploding Detective. So there's a detective series he has. Double Wonderful is not part of that.
Okay.
Dead Men Scare Me Stupid, Earth versus Everybody, The Last Detective Alive, The 50-Foot Detective, The $1 Million Policeman, Detective Made Easy, Burley Go Home, The Squirrel Who Saved Practically Everybody, and The Spy with No Pants.
Good.
Those titles alone.
Yeah. Funny titles, yeah.
This is kind of my kryptonite, is something I genuinely adore.
Well, yeah, there are a couple of reasons. Yeah, I mean, even when I was reading this, I was thinking this is going to be hard to talk about because, I mean, not only is it something that you like and I like it too, but it's also, because this is just so purely a comedy thing. That really is the only basis on which you can judge it. It's just, okay, it's funny. We liked it. Now we can say some of our favorite jokes from it. That's pretty much it. There aren't really any big themes in this. That it doesn't really make you think about things. But that's not what it's trying to do. So yeah.
So if nothing else, I got to talk about a book I like.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we might have to consider that in the future.
Yeah.
That there should probably be themes to talk about and stuff because we can do those for hours.
Right.
We can talk about The Simpsons.
We can definitely talk about The Simpsons. Yeah.
Are you into do you normally read comedy literature? I'm going to correct myself. Comedy books. I don't like that I say literature.
Yeah. No. I mean, I usually don't set out to read something purely because it's funny. Yeah, no, I mean, usually, if it is funny, in addition to being something else, that's great. With something like, Kurt Vonnegut, I mean, his stuff is funny, but there's also other stuff going on there. I mean, same with Douglas Adams,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of other interesting stuff as well. But
Douglas, that's with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's quoted. There's a lot of
oh yeah,
people quote it all the time. There's also a lot of stuff
Right.
Like there's like we're gonna build a highway through your planet. It's like you could talk. There's like stuff to talk about where it's like government and all that.
Right.
This is just a stupid guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Stupid guy. Yeah. Yeah. He's the narrator. Yeah. And so it's all in his voice. Yeah. Whenever something important is brought up, he's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. But I wasn't really concerned with that. So yeah, that's why, yeah, it's never going to get that deep. I mean, it's kind of like, to reference a much different author, Mark Twain. He, I think at the beginning of Huckleberry Finn, he says like, anybody who finds a plot in this will be shot, something like that. And and that's maybe not appropriate to say about that book, but it is appropriate to say about this book, I think. It's like, don't try to take this too seriously. That's not gonna.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Tom Sawyer.
Yeah.
Which we're gonna go into the classics. Eventually.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
But Tom Sawyer laughed out loud for that one too.
There's some funny parts. Yeah.
Huckleberry Finn. Not as much of a comedy, I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
But Tom Sawyer, I'm like, this is silly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is serious stuff happening too about growing up and parentage. So we might have to start doing stuff like that. Maybe if we read the rest of the books, we can do them in chunks, and that might be how comedy is handled in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Good. I did pick this one. For the record, so maybe my bad. I recommend it highly.
Enjoyed it, yeah.
But I got to pick stuff. I got to go. What is that? What is that? What do you mean the time machine did it? There's nothing to nitpick. There's.
Yeah. That's it's intentionally silly.
Yeah. Don Quixote is very funny and very sad. I was surprised by. I was surprised. I'm like, wait, this isn't jokes. I'm feeling things.
Right.
People told me this would be jokes. Yeah. And I'm like, there's just the most tragic story I've ever heard. And I'm like, what the? And then Don Quixote's like just hitting like vases in the base. He's not even there. Like someone else is telling their story and he's just like doing a goofy thing.
Yeah, Don Quixote is weird because it's like it's considered the first novel, but it's also a parody of earlier stuff. So it's like the first example of this new kind of literature is a parody of other stuff, and so that's a weird thing. But,
it's like how Scream, they made Scream, right? And then the people who did Scary Movie were like, let's make fun of that. It's like, no, this is already a
right. Yeah.
They already made I'm like mad when I found that out. I'm like, wait, all these jokes were already made. They just didn't fart when they said them.
Right.
Like you didn't do anything.
Yeah.
You're parodying a satire? I do think that the movie Kick-Ass,
right,
not the comic book. Again, that guy who writes those, I don't know his name. His comic books are like I was talking about this in the Discord we have, but he's just like mad at someone. And you're reading it and like, are you mad at me? Like you're reading it and he's like, I hate Superman. And I was like, okay, like who are you talking to right now?
Okay, so he has some kind of axe to grind that is unspecified. Yeah,
and you're like, is this? Are you mad at? Because it's like, yeah, dude, he's not real.
Right.
And all you do is write superhero stories.
Right.
But the comic book I did not like. The movie, it's better. And it's a more Don Quixote type story because it's a guy who obsessed with comic books. I want to do that.
Right.
Because I think if you were going to modernize Don Quixote, it would be about like comic books or movies or video games, I guess. Like it wouldn't be about books.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's another tough thing. Yeah, if you try to read Don Quixote, because it's like it was written in the early 1600s, and it's about a guy who's so ridiculous because he's from an earlier time, from the he's affecting clothes from the 1300s or something. But it's like, from our perspective, it's like, well, yeah, but this is all old. It's like just what he's doing is slightly older than the society, but it doesn't it doesn't clash as much to us.
Yeah, it's like that could be the same. It's like kind of like Back to the Future, where it's like we're from the 80s and we're going back to the 60s.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, oh, I don't know what either of those are.
Yeah, the 80s stuff is just as dated as the 50s stuff, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Did you watch The One with Jet Li? We can just fade out.
No.
Oh, wait, before we go, next time it's going to be a movie. General rule, a movie and 2 books, maybe a video game. It's going to be, I know you're thinking, okay, yeah, what's it going to be?
Wakanda Forever.
We're going to watch that. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that.
And then, you didn't answer me. Did you watch The One with Jet Li?
No.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's like a multiverse. It's like Highlander. Did you watch Highlander?
I've seen the first Highlander, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Imagine that, but it's a guy doing that to himself across the multiverse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Intriguing.
You could argue it's connected to time travel. It's not.
Right.
It's very specifically multiverse.
Okay.
So, like, if you kill yourself in another reality, you get that energy. It gets dispersed throughout all your realities.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, technically, to go to Highlander, if you're an immortal, you technically are time traveling, just very slowly.
Yeah, what they do with that is because, like, they all get stronger, but only one of them is aware of it.
Right.
So it's sort of like if you, like, a version of yourself was, like, doing things that let you fly, you would never know. Like, it's like, oh, yeah, like, all of you can, like, bend steel with your bare hands if you, like, go to do it. But, like, that would probably never come up. So, it's like, oh, yeah, you can fly now, by the way. So you have, like, one guy's like, oh. They're like, hey, shouldn't you be getting, like, weaker as you get older? And he's like, oh, yeah, it's in good shape.